Good morning, everybody. So glad you are joining me today. I thought today what we would do um, is a little bit of a stitch along, and what I decided to do is also show you Pattern Keeper and how I use Pattern Keeper when I stitch. Um, Everybody does it a little bit different, but I thought, well, I will show you what I do that makes my stitching a tad easier for me. Um, I'm happy to say that Stitcher's Retreat, which is what we're working on today, is, let me see here, 91.03% finished. We are in the home stretch. Thank heaven. I love this piece, but in all honesty, I'm getting a little tired of stitching on it. I'm ready for something new and some lighter colors and all of that. So, um, so the plan today is to show you how I use Pattern Keeper along with my stitching, and I'd like to answer some questions that I have gotten um, over time since I have been. Uh, Pardon my reach. I have to adjust my laptop here so that it doesn't kind of sort of want to fall, and I can make sure I'm in your screen. There we go. Now put this back a little bit like this. There we go. Pardon the band-aid. Cut myself this morning opening a bottle of pills. Oh, who'd have thought? The horrors. The horrors. Okay, let's adjust this a little bit better. And I'm trying to also not get the glare on the iPad. But anyway, what I thought I'd do is answer some questions while we're stitching today. And, I don't plan on this being a really long video, but you'll get the idea and we'll have a little bit of fun stitching together. So as you can see on here, I already have my parked threads marked, and you can see them hanging here. Okay, so what I'm going to start, this is row 1, so I'm going to stitch across, drop down a row, go back, drop down a row, come across again. So that will be our path, and it's a zigzag path. Okay, and I will say, someone mentioned not too long ago about the fact that I try many different techniques and try and give you guys an update as to how they worked for me or how they didn't work for me. And what I'm going to say is, for as many ways as I've tried, I've tried stitching in columns, which is what I went back to here. I've tried the diagonal. I've tried cross country within a page. I tried for a little bit extreme cross country. I tried stitching in just say maybe a 30 by 30 cross country within maybe a 30 by 30 area. I've done all different kinds of things. And yes, and I do try and get back to you guys and say, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, this is what I'm happy with, this is what I'm not happy with. And to be perfectly honest, sometimes it just depends on the mood of the day of what I like and what I don't like. But I will say, I always seem to want to come back to some method of organized, methodical stitching and doing parking. That is the least frustrating. I don't have to sit and debate, okay, what color do I want to do, or where am I going to go with this, or what's the path of this color. I don't have to make all those decisions. I stitch one stitch at a time, follow the chart, you pick it back up, you always know where you are. Your stitches are much neater. There is the debate about the lines, like the diagonal line or the column line or the page line showing, and that we've debated so many times and so often. I still have to go with, I think it just comes down to tension and, how much are you pulling a stitch in one direction or not. And I also think your fabric has a little bit to do with it too. I think those that stitch on 8 o'clock, and I could be wrong about this, so please don't hold this as gospel, but somehow I think those that stitch on 8 o'clock maybe get a little less with the appearance of lines, because 8 o'clock is stiffer. Oh, can't talk this morning. 8 o'clock is stiffer. Unless you're really pulling overly tight, you're not going to pull those threads out of shape. So, what can I say about that? Lugana, linen, you have the opportunity to maybe pull the threads out of shape a little bit more, which causes the holes, which again relates back to tension. So this is how I use, we're going to do a little bit of, this is how I use Pattern Keeper to follow my stitching. And once I show you a little bit of that, which will probably be maybe this row and the next row, then I'm going to answer some questions for people and we'll see how it goes. Now that I'm almost 10 minutes into this, we're finally going to start to stitch. So if you see this, which looks like a poisonous sign, is my first stitch. So I am going to do that. I have this at a little bit of an odd angle so that you can see it and I can stitch it. Okay, now we see that stitch is here, so it's 2 stitches away. So in Pattern Keeper, and I just keep it in the markup mode unless I have to search for a symbol, as in what color is that symbol or where is it next. I pretty much just keep it in the markup mode, and I'm going to mark this one as stitched and I'm going to park it in that one. Okay, so there we go. So now we have this the next stitch is this one. So I'm going to, and yes, if you don't like threading your needles all the time, then this method is not for you. You need to weigh the difference of, you need to set what your priorities are and pick a method that matches what you want to accomplish. I'm looking for less frustration with stitching. So I'm going to mark, I'm going to mark this one as stitched, and that symbol again occurs here, so I'm going to park it there. So we're going to skip that stitch and park it here. Now, my next square, you can see, does not have a thread in it. Okay, so there's no thread there, and it's I call it a watermelon. That's what it reminds me of. So I'm going to go back to let me move this down a little bit so you can see it. I'm going to go back here to the mode that you can move it up in. And if you don't know this, You really only have to use this one and this one with all the advancements that have been made with Pattern Keeper. So I'm just going to quickly double tap, and that highlights that watermelon and tells me it's color number 782. Oh, I gotta get rid of this Band-Aid soon, it's annoying. I opened a new bottle of medicine this morning and it had one of those coverings on that you had to tear, and for some reason, somehow, I cut my finger. Okay, so, as most of you know, my little technique for threading a needle is lay it over your finger, lay your needle on top of the thread, and just roll and push. You see it pops up. Well, and when you move the needle to show you, it falls back out. So you just roll and push and pull that through. Takes all of a second. Okay, this one I'm going to start with the one thread loop stitch. So I'm going to go down in this hole. I'm going to come up in the top right hand corner of that stitch. I'm going to go back down in the top right hand corner of the stitch. I'm going to keep my finger on the thread so that it doesn't twist. I'm going to come up in my bottom left corner. I'm going to get this little tail that we left out of the way because we don't want to get that caught in. I'm going to go through my loop, move the tail, through my loop, pull the loop down and go back down in that top hole, and there is the first half of my stitch. And I drop my needle here. There we go. First half of my stitch. Move that out of the way. Oh, there we go. There we go. Come up in the bottom right, back down in the top left, and that completes the stitch. And we're going to untap the highlight. We're going to go back to the markup. We're going to mark this one as stitched, and we're going to park it as, whoops. We're going to park it as the last stitch in the row. Now, I could complete this right away, which I believe I am going to do, because if I look, I don't see any other instances where I'm going to need that color until I get over to the next column, which is over here. And that is the first place I'm going to need it, over there. So it would leave you two options. You can stitch this stitch and park over here in the next column, or you can stitch this stitch, end it, and then restart it when you get to the next column. I'm going to stitch this stitch and end it, because that makes less thread on the back. So I'm going to go complete the first half. I'm going to go in the top left corner. I'm going to go back down in the top left corner, which leaves me my loop. I'm going to come up in the bottom right corner, and I'm going to go through the loop, pull it tight, go back down, in the top left corner. This Band-Aid has to go. It's driving me a little crazy. Okay. I'm going to go a couple threads away and do a little bit of a tacking stitch, which you don't really have to do, but I like it to be on the safe side. And then I am going to clip this thread close, and we are done with this color for now. So that means I will wrap it back on my bobbin. And stick it away. So let's get rid of that. So now we have the stitch done, this stitch done, oops, put it back in the markup, and this. Okay, come on. There we go. Sometimes if your pattern keeper starts not responding, if you go back to the move mode and you just jiggle it like this a little bit, that kind of gets it going again. Okay, so now we're back to, oops, we want to cut this tail off, clip it close. And now we want to go back to, I call it the poison sign. Danger, danger. Danger, danger. That's what I tell my grandkids. Danger. And be aware of stranger danger. Okay, so now this stitch goes here. And we're going to mark it off as stitched. Now here we can do one of two things. The next stitch is one stitch away, and then I'm going to double check. Then the next one is way down here. Oh, way down there. So it's within, it's a little bit over 10 stitches away. But we could, I will choose to park it down here at this stitch just because there's only that one stitch and it saves starting and ending a thread for just one stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this one because it is only one stitch away, so we don't have a long thread carry on the back. So I will mark that one as stitched, and I will go down into the next square and find that from my area that over here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches over and 4 stitches down. So we're going to count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's 4 stitches down. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to park it there. So let's unhighlight this, go back into the markup, put our mark that we have it, whoops, put our mark that we have it now parked, go back up here, and you have to go in your move tool to do that. Go back to the markup tool and mark this one also as stitched. Okay? So, next up is the double up arrows. I don't know what you call some of these signs. We all make up names for them. some of the names are pretty funny. Some of them aren't. So it looks, like I'm not going to have this stitch again. So let's just double check. Nope, it's not till the next column. So I'm going to stitch this and end it off. But actually, instead of doing, okay, I'm at a little bit of a wrong angle here. There we go. Instead of doing the loop at the end, I'm just going to stitch that stitch and then just do a little tacking stitch a little bit away, and that will be an elegant sufficient. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this Band-Aid needs to go. It is an annoyance, and now I can't even get it off my finger. Oh my God. There. That's an annoyance. I can't stitch with a Band-Aid. We know that. I have to feel the needle. Okay, we're just going to do a little bit of a tacking stitch, like so. Bring our thread back to the front and clip it off. So that completed that stitch. Mark it as stitched. Sorry for the buzz. Somebody's sending me a text, but that's okay. I'll get it later. Okay. Now we get 3 stitches in a row of one color. Hallelujah, Hollywood. Okay. So I hope you're getting the idea here a little bit of what we do. So we can stitch these 3 stitches, or this is how I do it. And you know, like I said, I sometimes get antsy because this method, in all honesty, for me is slower. I can stitch faster if I do cross country. The downside of that is I lose my place, I make more mistakes, make more mistakes. I get stitches where they don't belong, and the thing is, you don't find it until you put in the next color, and it's like, wait a minute, it's supposed to be an empty spot here, and it's not. Okay, so that finishes this row. So now we can mark these 3 as stitched. Let's move you back up here. And now you see that we also have the first 3 stitches in the next row are the same color. So we can go ahead and stitch those. That's 1. And no, I don't always stitch two-handed. A lot of times this hand is underneath to feel if I get a knot or not. But I have found I can stitch two-handed. That's not a problem for me. But I have found that I stitch A, faster, and B, more consistent tension when I stitch with just using one hand and have it go back and forth. So those are stitched. Now, where do we have that symbol? Again, so we'll go in the move tool, we'll double tap the symbol, highlight it, and we see it's down here near the bottom of the block that we're in. So we're going to jump down there and park our thread right here. because that's the next occurrence. So I'm going to unhighlight that, use the markup tool, double tap it real quick. That marks it's in my lower left hand corner. Go back to the move tool, go back up to where we are, and now we see, I have no more thread sparks, which means I need to start them. So again, highlight that color, tells me it's 301. So I think you get the gist of what I'm doing. So I think what I will do now is just keep stitching and not do a step-by-step narration. I think you kind of got the idea. So I guess I will find my tablet here and answer some questions. Oh, there it is. There it is. And we can talk about the questions and get those answered. Or at least a couple of them anyway. I pulled questions. I had already answered the individual person in the reply, but I pulled questions from the comments of my videos that I thought other people may be wondering about, because not everybody takes the time to read the comments, which is fine. So we'll answer them here. So the most recent one that I had, question I had, was the fact that I always, in a lot of my, well, most of my earlier videos, I always started in the upper left-hand corner on page 1. And now in my later videos, people are seeing that I'm starting in either the bottom right or the bottom left. And the question was, why did I do that? Why did I switch? And there's 2 answers to that question. One, and this is the first reason, is because I was experimenting once again to see if I liked starting in those corners better, either the bottom right or the bottom left. And depending on the way you stitch would dictate which corner you would start in. So that's one reason. It was more just initially it was just an experiment to see which way do you like the best. And now as you see, I changed my method of starting this thread. I just leave a little tail and stitch over it with this first stitch. And I think that's a little bit faster than that single thread loop start. So anyway, it was an experiment at first, and it was to see, did I like stitching from the bottom up better than I like stitching from the top down. Years ago, many moons ago, when I first started stitching, I always stitched from the top, from the bottom up, always. Then for some reason, I switched to the top down, because I thought that was the way it was supposed to be done. But the thing I like best, and it's very comfortable for me to stitch in either direction, top down or bottom up. I don't mind, and I really don't have a preference. But the deciding factor for me was the fact that if I stitched from the top or from the bottom up, all of the extra weight, let me show you this, which I now have kind of folded together and I undid my camera. Folded together and looped up over the, okay, let me make it a little dizzy here till I get this back where it needs to be. There we go. There we go. It's looped over the arm of the Lowry stand to keep it out of the way. But all of your stitched fabric is at the top, which makes the top very heavy. What I found I like better is when you stitch from the bottom up, all of this bulk is now in your lap and your hoop is not so heavy. And I found that I like that better. So the majority, I mean, this design is 625 stitches wide by 700 and something long. So you guys, you realize how your fabric gets heavier the more that you get stitched. And for me, I think it's easier, more user-friendly, to have that bulk in my lap rather than have it hanging up here at the top. So that's my answer to that as to why as to why I like to stitch, or why I chose the bottom corners for diagonal as opposed to the top. So hopefully that answers that question. So again, it's personal preference. You got to figure out what works best for you, and that is the thing with all of this about stitching. What works the best for you? Then I had a question: do I grid my own fabric? Because when you look at this, sometimes it looks like I did. I, up to this point in time, have purchased pre-gridded the Zweigert brand pre-gridded fabric. However, that being said, what I find I need to do is, especially once you start getting stitches in, I go over their gray lines with my water-soluble marker so that I can see them better, because there's times that, being as that they're gray, they just blend right into the stitching, and I can't necessarily see where the 10 by 10 squares are. So I do go over it. Part of me, because I do that, part of me wants to say that probably from new projects forward, that is, things I do not have started yet, I will probably grid my own. And when I grid, I would use, where is it? I would use this. It is the fine blue marker from, it's a Bohin marker, and it's erasable with water. I would say test it out first before you use it. I have not had any problem with it coming out for me. So this is my preferred marker, and it's because it has this very fine point, where a lot of the markers, the point isn't as fine, and then it runs and smudges all over the place, and you can pretty much see here. And I just go over lightly, just enough to be able to see the lines a little better. And tilt this, yeah. So just enough so that you can see where the lines are. So I probably will grid myself rather than spend the money on pre-gridded fabric. Because of the way I'm preferring to stitch, whether it be parking in columns or parking on the diagonal, I can grid just a section at a time. I don't have to sit and grid the whole thing beforehand. I can just grid as I go, and that's fine by me. Now, I saw this on another video, and I would love to give the person credit, but in all honesty, I forget what video it was or who even did this. So I will say this is not my idea. I got it from somebody else. What they did is they took another piece of fabric identical to the fabric they were stitching on. So if they had this is 25 count easy grid. So if they had a spare piece of 25, like a cut off piece, a leftover of 25 count, if they're let me start over. Oh, my head is not in it today. If they're using a fabric that is not gridded, whether it be 25 count, whether it be 20 count, whether it be whatever, 22 count, what they did is they took a sniplet, a leftover of that identical fabric, and they counted their 10 rows, okay, and marked it on that fabric. So what they then could do, instead of having to recount everything on their main fabric, they held this offcut or scrap piece that already had the 10s marked and lined up either the fabric threads or the blocks, whichever kind of material it is, and they could just mark their every 10 rows from that, so that they didn't end up having to always be counting. Now, that being said, personally, I would have to double check some of them just to make sure that I had it lined up correctly and I was marking the lines correctly. However, I thought that was a pretty creative idea to make marking your fabric a bit easier. So that, like I said, I can't take credit for that. It was not my idea. I heard it through the grapevine. But it seemed like a rather ingenious idea to me, where you could save all all that counting and use that piece and just move it each time to get your 10 by 10 squares. So hopefully that answers that question. People asked about the starting and ending with a single thread. I did show you just the beginning of this video how I started with a single thread, but if you need a refresher, and if you want to see how I end it, if you check out video number 56, that video is strictly a starting and ending with a single strand of floss using the loop method. So rather than go into detail on this one again, we will refer you back to video number 56. And hopefully that will help. If anybody still has questions about that, if they let me know, we can do another one. I can do another video and go over that again. Not a big problem. Then I get a lot of comments from people about, you know, I like the diagonal, but they have a hard time staying within that diagonal and they want to stray out of it. In all honesty, folks, there's no problem with doing that. If you are looking, now as you can see, I pretty much have just the section I'm working on. I have it enlarged that I'm seeing really just the section that I'm working on. So I don't necessarily see what's over here and see that there's maybe one stitch or two stitches of another color to stray. That's just my preferred way of stitching. It isn't a must or must not do. But there's nothing wrong with straying from your diagonal. If you want to pick up those extra stitches, great. If you want to go into the next either column or the next diagonal and it's a means of feathering, absolutely great. I just checked the other day and there were no stitching police yet. I guess the force hasn't been hired. But that police force hasn't been hired because I haven't found any. And really, stitching is for you. It's what works for you. Not what works for me, because what works for me might not going to be working for you. So it's all about what you want to do, what suits your stitching style the best, what clicks the most in your head. And if your head is saying, okay, I want to generally move in the direction of a diagonal, but I may stray from it because I finished all that color and I have thread in my needle yet and I want to finish off the strand of thread, finish it off. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I'm not going to stray and I'm going to end my thread here. And wind it back on the bobbin or put it back in the floss away bag or whatever your method of thread storage is as you're working on a heaven and, I was going to say heaven and earth design, but really what I should say is a full coverage design. You know, it's up to you. It's what works for you, what makes you happy, what is acceptable to you, not acceptable to me or anybody else in a group, what works for you. because you're the one stitching it. You're the one that has to be happy with stitching it. And I say that about any method of stitching. Do what works for you. I'm not an expert, believe me. I am just an everyday stitcher just like the rest of you. I am just sharing things that I've picked up over the years or that I've learned how to do over the years. What makes it easier for me, and if that works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, no hard feelings. Find what works the best for you. I share my thoughts and my ideas in hopes that maybe there's someone out there that it will help and make a difference for. But if it doesn't, seriously, that's okay. That's okay. I'm not out to say, oh, you got to stitch my way. That's not my thing. That's not my thing at all. My thing is, this is my knowledge base. This is what I know. This is what I do. If it helps you, awesome. If it doesn't, that's okay. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. Okay, let's see. Cynthia asks how to begin the next row after doing row 1 left to right. Do you go back to the left or do you start again on the right and go right to left? Well, I think you can see what I've been doing, and I do that zigzaggy thing. My row number 1 in my block went left to right. Row number 2 went right to left. Row number 3 went left to right. And row number 4 is going right to left. And I'll keep working down the column in that manner. Again, that's personal preference. I know some people who always start on the left and work left to right. There's some people who always start on the right and work right to left every row. And then there are those of us that zigzag our way down the diagonal or down the column. And then there's even one more way of what I did when I first started parking is I would look at the park threads in that row. And I would look at what color did I have to carry the furthest. Okay, so say I had, this is 902 that I'm going to thread my needle with. So say I had 902 in this stitch, but I wasn't going to need it again till I got over to this stitch. What I did was I would stitch it here, park it in the next occurrence. Because I knew that these stitches in the middle were going to lock down that carry. So I would stitch the stitches that had the longest thread carries first, and I would save the color that had the most stitches of that color in the row until last, because I knew then that that color was going to secure everything that I had already done all the thread carrying on. So that's yet another way. That way might tend to be a little bit faster because you're not rethreading your needle. If you're working 10 stitch wide column or diagonal, and sometimes in that 10 stitch wide you could potentially have 9 or 10 different colors depending on the amount of confetti. So it's just a matter of looking. Okay, I'm just seeing where I have to park this. It's just really a matter of looking what your given situation is when you are stitching, and how do you want to tackle that situation. So again, ain't no stitching police. Stitch however you want. I personally go left to right, right to left, left to right, right to left, and just keep zigzagging down the page, or down the column, or down the diagonal, or whatever area it is that you're wanting to work on. And let's see. How to end a single thread? Well, I think I'm going to refer Joyce back to video 56. That video explains that. I had somebody ask if that single strand loop method, if it would work when you're using 2 strands over 1. And my answer to that would be yes, it probably would. However, my question back to you, Santa Ana, would be, why would you want to do that when you could just cut twice the length of one strand, fold it in half, and use that method to start, rather than putting 2 threads together and using the method that you used for a single strand loop? That's just my question back to you. Can it be done with 2 strands? Yes. Can it be done with 3 strands? Yes. And my question would be, as long as you're using the appropriate count fabric to warrant 2 strands or 3 strands, or you're using the appropriate method. That's a lot of people stitch 2 strands over one 10 stitch on 25 count. So yeah, actually I'm not sure if that method would work 10 stitch. My personal thing is I don't do 10 stitch, so I don't have experience on that to share with you. Maybe, and if there's someone out there that does, let us know in the comments, because I really don't know the answer to that. I have tried 10 stitch. I so want to like 10 stitch, but in all honesty, 10 stitch is not my do. It really isn't. I think I parked this thread. I see what I did. I looked at this before and thought, what in the world? This is in the wrong box. This thread, and see, even though we look at the chart and mark our places and all of that good stuff, we sometimes park in the wrong spot. Cut that off. I parked in the right square of the wrong block. So let's fix that right now before we go any further. So this is what I mean about if you do park wrong and make a mistake, you do find it pretty quickly. Should be here. Okay, now we're cooking with gas again. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Where do I purchase fabric? 20 count, 25 count. You can get that. A lot of places are carrying your pre-gridded fabric anymore. Of course, Heaven and Earth Designs has it. 123 Stitch has it. I would say you can check with most any needle workshop, whether it be online or a brick and mortar place. Anybody who deals with Zweigert can get it and order it for you. You might have to wait till they reach their amount for a minimum order, but it's a Zweigert fabric, so anybody that deals with Zweigert can purchase that and special order it for you. Amy asked 20 count fabric, 1 or 2 strands, and the needle size. Again, that boils down to personal preference. A lot of people like 2 strands on 20 count. I myself personally prefer 1 strand on 20 count. I would say you really got to test stitch and see what it is that you like the best. Because I personally don't mind seeing a little bit of white show through, because when you use that 3-foot rule and you stand back away from it, and we all know that, for example, Heaven and Earth Designs are best viewed from a distance, not right up close. So if that little bit of white is showing through, you really don't notice it. You really don't notice it at all. So I would say you really gotta test stitch and check it out and see which you like best. As far as needle size, even on my 25 count, I am using a size 26 needle. Rarely, if ever, no matter what I'm stitching, no matter what count fabric I'm using, I use a 26 needle. I do not use a 28 anymore. Even when I was doing some stitching on 56 count linen, I was using a 26 needle. You want a needle that opens the hole enough that your thread is not going to wear from that back and forth constant through the fabric. I am finding for myself a 26 needle is my go-to needle anymore. I have not used a 28 needle in, I can't tell you when. It's been a long time. Okay, I think, somebody asked what do I use to stitch? Do I use a scroll frame? Do I use a hoop, a Q-snap, or whatever? I anymore am using either a hoop or a Q-snap. Bottom line is, as hard as I've tried, as much as I've bought and then sold, I just cannot get on with a scroll frame. I've tried. I just don't I just don't like it. It's not a hoop or a Q-snap is so much more portable. I want to be portable with my stitching because right now I'm over in my sun porch recording, and this is my my room that has all my stitching supplies in it. But in the evening, I sit with my husband in the living room. And if I have a big scroll frame on a stand, I can't take that over there with me. And I am one that if I get gung-ho on a project, I don't want to work on something else in the evening. I want to work on what I want to work on. So a hoop or a scroll frame is really the best option for me. So, speaking of that, and speaking of, oh, I'm over an hour here. Well, we'll get this in yet. Speaking of frames and stands, I just want to mention, I know a lot of people who have bought the Nerge lap stand. And I had done a video on that early on, or a couple months ago, and I love the lap stand. Don't get me wrong, I love it. And I used it so much since that, from tightening and loosening and tightening and loosening and doing adjustments, because depending on where I sit or where I am, your adjustment needs to be a little bit different to get it in the right position for you. What happened was I stripped the screws. So, just a heads up if that happens to you. At the hardware store by us, now we did not go to Home Depot or Lowe's. This was the hardware store that is independently, well, it's an Ace Hardware that's near us. We could not find screws the same size. Because this stand is made in, I forget what country. Part of me wants to say Turkey or somewhere over there. They use metric screws, and we don't use a metric system in the United States. So what my husband did for me, let's see if I can show you here. He made the holes. Okay, Karen, get it in the frame. Just a smidge bigger to fit our size screws. And then I use a wing nut to tighten it so that it stays. And in all honesty, this holds better than the original hardware that was on it. Now, this particular one, he found a heavy duty screw. Let me flip it around here. I don't know, he had a special name for this one. And that one fit in the original hole. But what I have to do is use an Allen wrench. These little things. There you go. Okay, here. There. One of these on this side. To hold that so that I can tighten it with the wing knob on the other side. So, just a heads up for those of you who have gotten the Nerge stand. But since he did this for me, this does not slide at all. What was happening is it wasn't staying tight enough, and then it would start moving, for lack of a better way. So just a heads up for that. You may have to do a little surgery on your stand if you use it heavily and things start to loosen and not be able to be kept tight anymore. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So now that we are working on an hour and 10 minutes, well, I thought I had nothing to talk about, but hopefully you got a lot of your questions answered. If you have more questions, please, please put them in the comments below. If you have suggestions for a video of what you would like to see, please add it to the comments, and I will do my best to try and get a video on that particular subject for you. There isn't too much that I don't know how to do. So please, if you have questions, if you want to see something special, let me know so that I can make those videos. I just want to say too that I have had so many positive comments on the videos that I make, that I just want to thank each and every one of you for your support. I know there are times that I go a little bit of a length of time in between videos, and a lot of that is because I don't necessarily have enough to talk about. You know, with all the stay-at-home orders that are going around, and right now things getting much worse than they had been. I know Pennsylvania's COVID cases are on the rise, and it's not good. And we are hermits. We truly are hermits. We stay at home. We stay at home 90% of the time, except for when we have to go out for groceries, or we have to have a doctor's appointment for whatever reason. But other than that, we are at home, which is another reason there's just not that much to talk about. You know, I'm a one person at a well, right now I'm a one person at a time project, because I am so close to a finish on this, that I really would like to get it done. And then I can go back to working on maybe several projects and have a little bit more to talk about and show you, and you know, maybe even do some videos using different projects. So, you know, that's in the future. But if you have something special you want to know about, or a question, please let me know, and I will try and make a video to show you how to do that. But I seriously, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank all of you for the just outpouring of support for my videos. I so very much appreciate it, and appreciate each and every one of you. So with that, if you're a returning subscriber, thank you ever so much. If you're new here, I surely do hope that you find something that you like about this channel, and will come back again. And I encourage all of you to please hit the subscribe button and the bell, so that you get notification when I do a video, and that you can come and join me for the day, or for the stitching hour, which now has turned into be almost an hour and 15 minutes. But please do subscribe, so that you get the notifications. I noticed that a lot of people that watch my videos aren't subscribers, and that's okay. But if you know, I would appreciate the subscription, if you choose to do that. If not, that's okay too. But I just want to say thank you so very much for all the support in these videos. So, with that, my friends, I think we're going to call it a day today. And hopefully, I will get to another video next week. And with everything that's going on in the world today, I hope all of you stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, do what we need to do to have this world be a safer place, or this country be a safer place again. And with that, I will see you next time. Have a great day, have a great week, and always remember to find your joy. Bye.